Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into crypto, but we're going to park the price charts and all the market noise outside. We're here to talk about the really big stuff, the wild, world-changing philosophy that's actually baked into the code. Look, if you're anything like me, you are so tired of the hype. Because you know what? The real conversation around crypto isn't about getting rich. It's about these massive questions like, what does freedom actually mean? Who or what should we trust? And who really holds the power in this new digital age? So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look right past the money to find the core ideology. Then we'll get into how crypto is trying to completely rewire the idea of trust itself. We'll explore the mind-bending concept that truth can literally split in two, check out the strange human paradoxes that pop up, and finally, we'll ask the big one. Does all this mean we need a whole new kind of philosophy? All right, let's jump right into our first big idea. Why is crypto even a thing? I mean, really, if you get past the Lambo memes and the headlines, there's a really powerful why that's driving this whole movement. Okay, let's just be real for a second. For a lot of people, the goal seems super simple, right? Get rich fast. The dream is to hit it big, make a boatload of cash, buy that Lambo or whatever, and you're set. That's the story we always hear, the one on the surface. But if you scratch beneath that surface, that's where you find the real story. At its heart, crypto is this incredibly optimistic, totally radical ideology. You know, it's born out of this deep, deep distrust of the old guard. The big banks, the governments, it's this attempt to build something brand new, something that promises more freedom. And it comes straight from these very potent crypto-anarchist and libertarian roots. And that whole idea of building something new brings us to maybe the most fundamental shift of all, how we think about trust. And this isn't just some tech upgrade. It's a huge philosophical shift in who or even what we choose to believe. So in the normal world, the world we all grew up in, we rely on what some philosophers call epistemic authorities. Just think about it for a second. We trust a university to say a study is valid. We trust a government to issue currency. We trust a newspaper to report facts. They're the gatekeepers. They tell us what's real and what's not. Crypto just takes that entire model and flips it on its head. Trust doesn't live with people or their fancy reputations anymore. It moves over to the code itself. So instead of believing someone because of their title, you trust a system because you can see exactly how it works. The justification isn't somebody's word for it. It's a transparent process that anyone can verify. And this leads us to the new reality. There's no CEO to make a decision. There's no board of directors, no government oversight committee. The blockchain itself, that distributed ledger, becomes the final word. The system is the authority. Full stop. Okay, but if the system is the authority, what on earth happens when the community running the system has a massive fight? This is where we get into one of the absolute weirdest and honestly most fascinating concepts in this whole space. And it's such a critical question, right? If you don't have a king or a president to make the final call, how do you solve a huge fundamental disagreement about the rules of the game? Well, the answer is a wild process called a fork. So imagine this. You start with one blockchain. Everyone agrees on this one single history of what happened. It's one truth. But then, there's a huge disagreement. Maybe it's a technical thing, or maybe it's about how to respond to a major hack. The community just can't agree, so the chain literally splits in two. This is exactly what happened to create Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And all of a sudden, you have two separate, perfectly valid and coexisting versions of the truth. So the big takeaway here is pretty mind-blowing. In the world of crypto, truth isn't necessarily this one objective thing that's just out there waiting for us to find it. It's something that is built. It's negotiated by a community through a process. It's not the truth. It becomes a truth that a group of people all agree to live by. So this, of course, brings us to the human part of all this. Because when you take these huge, radical ideas about truth and trust and you drop them into the real world with messy human beings, you start to see some really strange, kind of funny paradoxes. Okay, here's paradox number one, and it's a big one. On the one hand, blockchains are supposed to be radically transparent. Every single transaction is right there on a public ledger for the whole world to see. But On the other hand, trying to actually read and make sense of that data, it takes some serious technical chops. It creates this bizarre situation, a system that's totally open, but in practice is completely unreadable to almost everybody.
And then you've got the paradox of belief. Traditionally, we try to base what we believe on things like evidence, reason, logic. But in the crypto world, belief is often driven by something else entirely. Pure social momentum, memes, and just massive hype. Just think about Dogecoin. Its value had nothing to do with fundamentals. It had value because a huge group of people collectively decided it had value. It's a world where hype literally becomes its own kind of truth. And all of this leads to this really amazing observation from the writer Eric Kim. He points out that a lot of people sitting on what is, on paper, a giant fortune in crypto, well, they don't go out and live these crazy, lavish lives. He says they tend to live more like Zen monks. It's just the perfect snapshot of this clash between these radical digital ideas and our expectations of what wealth and human nature are all about.
So, where does all this leave us? We've seen that crypto is way more than just a new kind of money. It's a force that is pushing us to rethink how we see the world, and it leads us to one final, really deep question.
I mean, just think about what we've talked about. When you put it all together, you realize crypto is forcing a fundamental rethink of everything. Truth? It's not absolute anymore. It's negotiated. Knowledge? It isn't just a human thing. It's coded. Justification? Not always rational. Now it's algorithmic. And belief? It isn't always based on evidence. Often, it's just social. It's mimetic. And this brings us to the final thought, the big question. With all of these huge shifts, do we actually need a brand new philosophy of knowledge, a new epistemology, just to make sense of this increasingly digital, decentralized world we're building? That's the question crypto really leaves us to chew on.